I shaved, and well, it's not completely shaved. It's mostly shaved, and my teeth are a bit cleaner because I stopped drinking soda, and I'm trying to brush more. Uh, I've taken a shower. I just did. It's about as clean as I get, and I've been watching documentaries as usual. Last one I watched was on the JWST telescope that they sent into space, um, and the Mars rover was. I cut into half of that, and I was getting tired of it because I mean science documentaries are not all that interesting because they try to make it like always edge of the seat. You need this little thing to do, this little thing to do, this little thing, and I'm like, well, guys, couldn't you spend more time working on a little robotic guy that goes around and makes all this stuff? You know, spend spend time on doing a nanobot technology than focusing all your time on trying to perfect every little thing. I mean, I would be working on nanobot technology rather than working on putting something up into space. You know, uh, nano plants, nano bots, nano manufacturing facilities, and you know, those would be things because if you could get something to build what you need in space and then give it all the AI and stuff to be aware of what it needs to do and all that stuff, then you to do it unmanned and to also do it without having to send it commands and stuff. That would be a bigger feat than whatever it is they're doing now, and I think that would challenge the AI community, the people that are working on artificial intelligence, to try to come up with not thinking bots, but bots that are um, able to stuff, construct what they need, and to learn a little bit from the situation at hand um, to fix situations unguided, or at least do it to a point to where you don't have to send so much. You don't have to collect so much information, and you don't have to. And if you could do that, then there would be, due to the automation, there would be a lot less, you know. But keep in mind, physicists hate computers. It's pretty much a general known fact. Physicists hate computers. And so if you got astrophysicists, they're going to hate computers. They're going to use computers to do stuff, but it's really going to be hands-on. They would prefer to have hands-on than to have somebody than to um, put all the control into the computer rather than, you know, they would rather have more control over it. And at least that was true of my father, and that was true of the people of the time. You know, the thing is that that's the reason why they have Fortran, the formula translation software, is because physicists hate computers. They wanted a language that would permit them to turn their formulas into something the computer would run without having to learn C or some other programming language. They wanted a programming language that was focused on translating formulas. Okay, So they had to create a custom language that would permit them to work with computers. There was another one at the same time that was produced called COBOL, which was designed to permit business people to work with computers. It was a language aimed at business people. Pascal was designed to be a learning language. That's for people educating people how to program. That's what Pascal was created for. There was a number of those languages that, and then above that they created more fully featured languages as a result of the Free Software Foundation. I think that's what led to the creation of Python, which is really just a mix of all different kinds of programming languages. And that's the reason why it's better for you to learn Python than learn anything else, is because it pretty much gives you a taste of everything there is in the way of programming languages. And a lot of the AI software that's in freeware is available as Python libraries and modules and stuff. And so people who learn Python can go on to work with AI, and actually work on real solutions using artificial intelligence, using neural nets and junk. I don't know much about that stuff, but I'm familiar with it. That's the reason why I watch documentaries. And I don't watch science documentaries, I just watch documentaries. Last night I was watching a documentary from Netflix about the worst roommates. There was this lady that had killed off like 9 or 10 people and buried them in her backyard, and was collecting the Social Security checks from the government and accruing the money from that to support herself. Seriously, that just the most disgusting stuff. But I watched that documentary, and then let me see what else documentaries. It's really hard to remember what documentaries I saw within the past week or the past month, but there's so many. There's so many that I come across, and it's not only. I watched the documentary on. There was a documentary on cybercrime, I think. Yeah, there was that guy that he had traveled around the globe, collected millions of dollars, protected his ID, and when he was caught, he was certain that there would be no way that the FBI would be able to find out where he was, and then he had determined that they had used a piece of technology that would that could be used to eavesdrop on people. And what it did was that it would collect communications from people's cell phones, pretending to be a cell phone tower in their area, whenever it's just a van with a cell phone fooler. And it's what it does is it substitutes the cell phone towers around by forcing the cell phones to recognize it as being the one that they need to connect to. And then the government used this to pinpoint exactly where this guy was hanging out by moving this van around in his neighborhood, and eventually through triangulation and just measuring the strength of the signal, were able to possibly not only using vans, possibly using drones as well, was able to figure out where he was hanging out. And this was done a decade ago. It's not current. This was done a decade ago, a decade or two ago. And this was before, he said that whenever they incarcerated him, it was before the phones were released. And so he said whenever he got out, as a result of he got a appeal. They permitted him to appeal um, after 6 years of incarceration, and because the government was afraid. Well, they allowed him to get a plea deal because they're afraid that if he appealed the sentence, which was the judge decided that the judge had decided on the case that he had brought before the government to appeal his incarceration, that they had cheated in one area by collecting information illegally without citation, and the judge decided that with that this small little problem that the government had, this one technology that nobody else had, or that and was keeping it secret from everybody, that was allowing them to eavesdrop on people, that it was necessary in order to find this guy because he was a bigger threat. And so, but the thing was that the government later learned that if he appealed that, then it would open up a whole new can of worms. So they gave him a plea deal to let him out of jail early, and he left within a week of of pushing that point. And after that, there well, before that, there was a news article on what was going on with what he was doing and what he was trying to do, and that made enough of a rumble that there that they came up with laws to protect people's to protect people from the eavesdropping that the government would do using a piece of technology called a stingray, which is what they used. And stingray was this temporary cell phone tower, that mobile cell phone tower that would permit them to collect, to actually handle all the communications for a number of cell phone devices in the area. And that was the big concern, was that it wasn't only his device, but they were collecting information from everybody's devices in that area. And so that was a privacy violation. And so, of all the stuff that he had done, the millions of dollars he had collected doing various sorts of cyber crimes, um, that was, you know, that was small compared to the injustice that the government was doing to try to catch him. It was what the question was: is privacy, which is a bigger deal, security or security or safety? And safety being safe from criminals, or are they really protecting you from a criminal? And they're going to justify something that's going to limit your security by making you more safe. And so that was one of the issues. And well, that was the big major issue that was pushing that. and the whole documentary was really a combination of crime, a crime story, crime investigation, and um, the it was really to show a criminal that was smart and handled his own. He actually defended his own case. Um, he was the FBI had a really hard time finding him, and they had to cheat in order to get him, to nab him, because he was so versed in all the way things work in order to prevent them from actually catching up with him. I mean, he was just this super smart kid. And what had originally happened was that they caught him on some sort of criminal activity that he was doing. I forgot originally what it was that he did, and he served like 3 months. And then he determined he didn't want to serve another 3 months in jail because that was time he would lose doing the sorts of things that young men should be able to do in their youth. You know, the time now is more important than the time later. And so he decided to flee and become a fugitive and see the world before going back to jail. And hopefully not ever going back to jail. And he was going to collect a lot of money and sort of live someplace else in the world rather than living, you know, in America. And it was a really good documentary. And how much of these documentaries is stuff that I remember? Not. It really depends. Over time, I will probably remember only little iotas of certain documentaries. You know, the things that will stick with me, the stuff that's more profound, the stuff that won't. Uh, it's not so, to me would not be something really a big deal. I remember documentaries I saw about Muscle Shoals, the musicians that performed with Muscle Shoals, and and awed by the Leonard Skinner, how those guys came around. Leonard Skinner got their name from the song "Hello Mother, Hello Father" by what's his name, the famous comedian, the guy who does he does various sorts of songs, and he's got that "Hey to the fat guy, you kept us out of war by eating," you know, because this is it's really funny. Alan Sherman, there we go, Alan Sherman. Hello Mother, Hello Father. In the lyrics, they're talking about Leonard Skinner. That was where Leonard Skinner got their name. And the band was in Alabama. Muscle Shoals was a studio in Alabama. It was actually a town, and in Muscle Shoals there was a studio there, and that studio was where Aretha Franklin did some of her music, I think, um, and even the Rolling Stones went out there to use it, and it was just a place to do Southern style music. And they got word that there was some band locally that was, you know, members here and there of a band that was of people that could work together to produce a band or something, and they put them together and started. I guess that's what led to the culmination of Leonard Skinner, and that was through Muscle Shoals. And then I saw a documentary about Leonard Skinner and everything that happened all the way up to the point of of the plane crash, and the things that stuck out to me was the story about how the band was not really well behaved. That one of the guys was really upset that went on tour. one of the guys had a briefcase full of beef jerky, and rather than handing it out to the other members for free, he was selling it off. And so that was kind of the tension that was going on inside the, you know, inside the band, is that there were people there that, I mean, that they weren't like really trusting of each other. They were not, they were all kind of independent in a band that should have been more integrated. And the guy that was really holding the whole band together was the lead singer. You know, he was the guy that was keeping them, and their drummer, who was um, a very spiritual guy. I mean, and the other members, some of the other members were kind of at odds with each other's, including the lead singer, who was kind of just keeping everything. And the thing that was remarkable about the lead singer is that when they were on stage, he didn't wear shoes. He walked around barefoot. And I don't remember all their names, but I remember, you know, little features like that. And that was a documentary I saw like about over 6 months ago. Yeah, I think it was, yeah, it was over 6 months ago. And so I remember seeing documentaries about Jim Croce, and that he had these parties um, where everybody wanted to be, and everybody came together. They really loved the parties that Jim Croce had, because it really permitted them to get back to having fun like they did before they were famous, you know. And so, and this is also kind of sounds like the kind of fun that musicians would have whenever traveling around with, what's his name, the fifth Beatle, or the sixth Beatle, what is his name? The guy who did that song, um, um, Harry Nilsson. Harry Nilsson, they're musicians that would, I think Harry Nilsson and the guy who did the songs to Toy Story, Newman, uh, Garrett, not Gary Newman, uh, his name is Randy Newman. Randy Newman and Harry Nilsson, I think. I may be wrong about that. I think Randy Newman also hung around with oh, Elton John's most favorite musician, the guy who says, "I'm up on the tightrope." Da, 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 da. I think Randy Newman hang out with him. I also remember that Sylvester Stallone's brother was going to do a record with Harry Nilsson, and whenever John Lennon died, that screwed that up. Yeah. Harry Nilsson, uh, Harry Nilsson would have these. It was Harry Nilsson and John Lennon that had a screaming contest one night that ruined Harry Nilsson's voice. Harry Nilsson uh, would have these parties, and the way things went is that the wives of the people that he would take out to have fun would go, "Oh no, you're not going with him tonight," because the idea with Harry Nilsson is that he would drink you under the table, and basically you would end up 2 or 3 days later in a massage parlor somewhere in San Francisco, and wonder how you got there. And that was the kind of, it was kind of like when Harry Nilsson knocked at your door and wanted to go out and have some fun, you went on the trip because it was going to be the most fun you've ever had, and the wives or significant others of the people that he had fun with would go, "Oh no, you're not gonna let him take you out," and because that's what Harry Nilsson did. I mean, besides being one of the most um, fantastic songwriters of our time and a great singer, um, in his albums, he sang with himself. And somebody said, well, all these other singers and people that are playing in here, oh, I'm getting him mixed up with Prince. Prince also did that. Prince played all the parts in his albums, and people were like wondering, he should be paying off all these other guys, and the reality is that he played all the parts in his first album or so, and that's what Stevie Wonder did that with his with one of his albums. He and so did Todd Rundgren. That was the thing to do in the '70s. See if you can make, because of multi-track recorders, it opened up the possibilities to people doing their own albums, with them just doing them, and a lot of musicians did that. You know, Todd Rundgren. Uh, I think Steve Winwood did an album by himself without guitars. I think that was Ark of a Diver that he did without. I think he was the only guy in the album. But that's how my brain is. I just how I relax is by sitting and watching documentaries, and then, you know, and it can be any kind of documentary, or it can be somebody doing a book signing tour. There was some guy talking about um, uh, how the Japanese were influenced by um, Roosevelt, by Teddy Roosevelt. Uh, Teddy Roosevelt. This is there are two Roosevelts. This is the older one. Told Japan that if they wanted to become a superpower, they need to they need to to control another 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 country, and so Japan learned that in order to become a superpower, they would have to control China. You know, they'd have to imprison, in make Chinese their servants or whatever, something like that. That was one of our presidents that did that a long time ago. Um, why he did that, it sounds so far fetched that somebody would do that. You know, say to Japan that if you want to become a superpower, this is what you need to do, and they did that, and you know, there are some evil people in the world, and they're in our government. You know, in our past governments. I had heard that Christian or uh, Catholic monks or whatever had made it onto the mainland of Japan, and was converting their was pretty much spreading the word of Christ to the Japanese, and this was the Japan had its own religion, Shinto, which is like hero worship or something like that. It also had this they had this monarchy or whatever, that relied on samurais to protect them, and to control the peasants, and the peasants, according to my karate teachers, that's where karate came from, was to permit the peasants to protect themselves from the samurai. But anyhow, this these monks or whatever passed on the story of Christ, and it was so overpowering that the samurais put down their weapons because they wanted to live for Christ, and the Japanese saw that the Japanese aristocracy or monarchy saw this as ruining their country's security by having the samurai putting down their swords because they wanted to live for Christ. And so they forced everybody entering Japan to step on a cross because they didn't want that to ever happen again. I mean, before entering, they had to step on a cross, and so a missionary is probably not going to step on a cross. But keep in mind that there's nothing special about the cross. The cross you have to keep in mind, is the worst form of Roman torture that ever was, and that cross should represent Jesus, considering that the Bible says that place no idols before me, and the cross is an idol. And even though it's in remembrance of Christ, it's an idol. There's really no reason why we should be using crosses as in represent. I mean, it represents the ultimate form of torture, and it would be much better to represent Jesus as a rose of Sharon, as a rose, rather than, which is a God created item, than a man-made item, which is what the cross is. And man made the crosses that tortured men in the ultimate form of punishment. And why would you use a man-made object to represent, I guess you could say, well, it was man that put Jesus on the cross, and so anyhow, there's a lot of symbology there, but the thing is that when it boils down to it, what are you staring at? What's more important, the amount of anguish that Jesus went through on the cross, or all the stuff that he said? And the idea that he's the last sacrifice, that, keep in mind that the reason why the Jews sacrificed animals was because it was the method by which God defined how man could meet God halfway, was through a sort of stream of blood that came from the sacrifice of a lamb, and so that was the covenant between man and God. And it was really kind of just part of the whole law thing, the Jewish law, that this is how you dealt with sin. And they didn't even end up following it right. I mean, at the end of it, the law was kind of a sham, because people did it, but it didn't really affect their behavior at all. And so the idea is that all that old stuff that God did with these people, and you can say, well, that's not God, there is no God, and all that stuff. Well, that's a side thing. I would say it would, if it's the psychology, it's the Bible's more about psychology than it is about fact. Okay, you need to have really wild stories to inspire people to go forward and to grasp onto important things that are reflective of what we are. Okay, and that's in the Bible. And it's the lessons are important, and then the lessons are is that in our nature we cannot follow any kind of law. We can't even follow the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments are really, a lot of people say that Ten Commandments really just um, a way of proving that we're imperfect, and we need hierarchies because we don't have absolute perception. We don't have absolute trust. We don't have the capacity to perceive what people are doing anywhere at any time like the angels or God are. And so we only have limited senses, and we have to delegate to other people to handle other people that they can't see. And that's the reason why we need hierarchies, because we have limited perception. And so because of that, there's no way that anybody's going to be able to follow law, and we have to make decisions. Uh, Jesus said, "Where any two of you are, there I am," which is that you can kind of figure it out. Where any two of you that are following what I've said, you can negotiate among yourselves of what the right thing is to do. You can make your own decision up. I I'll be there because my teachings are in both of you. You will produce me between the two of you through negotiation. It's that negotiation that makes things work. Um, it's the deep thinking and solving of problems by coming together and comparing notes. You know, there is more sin in somebody who is in sin being accidental sin. People are going to make more mistakes when they're doing them by themselves. They're going to make less mistakes if they're organized by comparing notes and trying to nail most of the bugs that they have in their thinking. You'll come and talk to somebody else, and they say, that's probably not such a good thing. And then by bouncing ideas back and forth, you both, and there's a saying in the Bible that says, iron sharpens iron. So that is that you'll become a sharper tool. You'll become a sharper sword blade that's able to cut better by coming in contact with somebody who has a different point of view, that's going to be able to cause you to recognize things that you didn't recognize. And they're teaching us like that all throughout the Bible. And people they'll say, well, we don't need the Bible, we're already ahead. I say, look, the Bible's gotten people through the last 2,000 years. Whatever you've come up with right now, how long is that going to last for people? The geologists came up with rules about 20, 30 years ago that no longer apply anymore, because they found new stuff to point out that old stuff was complete bullshit, you know. And the first archaeologists that really kind of screwed things up were the guys like Ben Franklin, that just went out in their backyard and started digging up stuff and throwing it in their curios cabinet. Curios cabinet was kind of like a little museum. It was the first museums. And you've probably heard that when they found mummies in Egypt, somebody was taking the mummies and pulverizing them and selling them as an aphrodisiac or something. Or they were selling it as, they were putting it into drinks and using it as an elixir. So, you know, the things people do with the world, the things that people do with things that today we consider to be important, years ago were unimportant. And if you hold something so valuable now, in 10 or 20 years, it's probably not going to be as valuable. And the thing with the Bible is it really hasn't, nobody's really been able to point at anything in the Bible and say, well, this is complete. This is not really useful. This is not, um, there's nothing here inspirational. There's nothing here new that's that's going to keep that's not going to keep people inspired. And there are scientists who um, who are Christians. Knuth. Donald Knuth is a Christian, and he's considered to be the father of computational theory. He's got tons of books. If you've ever gotten a master's degree in computer science, you've read plenty of his theory, his computational theory books. And so you have to go through Donald Knuth. And so the thing is that the people's beliefs about scientists are that the science is going to solve the problems. Everybody in the science community, especially computer scientists, know that there are only certain problems that you can solve, and those are the ones that either you can observe or the problems that are computationally feasible. Some problems are not computationally feasible. For instance, computing a volume of air accurately, with all the interactions of the atoms and stuff like that, would require a lot of a better one, ray tracing, real ray tracing, not graphical ray tracing. To do accurate ray tracing, for tracing light to the eye, is less efficient. Though it's more correct, it's less computationally efficient to producing images graphically. And so what they do, rather than tracing light to the eye of the observer, they trace eye rays from the observer to the lights, and that produces less accurate images, but it's more feasible to produce. And whenever they talk about ray tracing, they're not talking about tracing light; they're talking about tracing vision to the world, in the computational world inside of the math that represents a simulated 3D universe. And the video games we play, and the movies we watch all take advantage of shader languages. And so anyhow, that's me. That's kind of how I work. And if I'm not doing that, I'm doing something else, like I'm playing a video game or I'm relaxing in some way or another. Yesterday, I determined that it would probably be better if I was to code on my website to stick. Um, oh, I better hold on one second. I'm going to get